Hello, everybody. On today's episode, I have on a guest who has taken the study of consciousness to the field of science. This gentleman can and has scientifically proven God's existence. Everybody, welcome Justin Deschamps to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on, Justin. It is an honor to have you on. Like I was just telling you before we started the recording, I am a huge fan of yours. Your work on edgeofwonder.tv is unmatched, in my opinion, to any other information that I've come across spiritually or just uh, in order to raise your mental capabilities. You know, your show really breaks down everything fine tunedly.
Nice. Yeah, I really try to have a thorough presentation because I want to offer, the tools that I use to gain the understanding I have and try to uplift other people in that regard and engage in a discussion. I don't know everything, so I often get to interact with people that know more than I do, and then we both get to share information. So it's pretty nice.
Yeah, well, that's I think the best part of being a creator is getting to you're not only you're trying to help others, but you're learning so much more as you're reaching out to others.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, it's my favorite part to do. Since I started this podcast. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am the founder of Stillness in the Storm, which is news and information website. Um, I I started my awakening journey, or the being led by the truth, we might say, wholeheartedly back in about 2010. I discovered that there were cures for cancer being suppressed, and it just totally shook me to my foundations. I just couldn't believe that that was even true. And after spending about 2 months or so reading a book by Dr. Gerson, who is the information I encountered, um, uh, and I was attempting to debunk it, I ended up proving it to myself. That there were indeed cures for cancer. This guy did actually testify before Congress in 1946, when they were trying to develop a standardized policy for this in the treatment of cancer and causes and things of the sort. And basically, the committee said, "Well, your cures don't require radiation, surgical treatment, or chemotherapy. These are the treatments we're going to endorse in the future. So you're SOL. We're going to make your treatments illegal, and go die in a fire, basically." And the guy, Dr. Max Gerson, he ended up dying in 1955 for what many believe to be suspicious circumstances. So, needless to say, in the past, I was an atheist, and kind of guy who would just debunk anything that I felt like didn't fit with what I believed to be true, and which was basically the scientism, atheism kind of card carrying club that's very popular. This is 10 years ago now, and I just, like I said, it unraveled my reality, and ever since that moment, I call it a crisis of belief, which is actually not a great opportunity because it means spiritually, when you're having a crisis of belief, it means you go through the initiation of recognizing that your beliefs and your knowledge are only a partial picture of the whole truth, or there are some mix of totally false beliefs mixed in with some true ones. And, you know, neurologically, psychologically, the left and the right brain, they work together, and there's a left brain dominance that can happen where your first impression, the first experience with something where you try to figure out what it is and you're like, oh, that's what this is. That is the thing that tends to be dominant. So your brain naturally wants to, when you haven't been initiated into higher levels of consciousness, says, oh, well, this first impression I have, I don't like broccoli. I'm never going to eat it again. It's awful for me. But when you break down that belief about broccoli, to use an analogy, then the universe of the fullness of what broccoli actually means, which is infinite in a grand spiritual sense, can now become something you can interact with. And once you have that crisis of belief, then your real life kind of begins, I feel like, spiritually. So anyway, the long story short, started my awakening back then. I started Stillness in 2013, and it has evolved quite a bit over the years. And now it's basically a news and information site. We post a lot of politics and things of this sort, primarily because I believe politics is one of the most important areas that human beings need to become skilled at, because it's the way we as individuals, as sovereigns with rights and free will, form agreements, and that becomes the foundational tapestry of a society, whether it's a family, a husband and wife, or a local community, or a nation. And so politics is extremely important. There's some other reasons I post a lot of politics, but in any case, so that's Stillness. And then I started Into the Storm last year, where I post a lot more of the more in-depth kind of deep dive philosophy kind of stuff, as you know. So there you have it.
Oh, well, so these cures for cancer, what is it? Sound healing?
No. So Dr. Max Gerson's treatment used raw organic juicing and detoxification using coffee enemas, believe it or not. And although sound healing using something like cymatics is a valid form of treating cancer, and just to throw out some factoids on that, like, why is it that sound healing can work? It's because your body is itself a resonant device. All objects in reality are resonant. So whether we're talking about a cell phone or a ring on your finger or a body or a cup or a guitar, they all have resonant frequencies. If you know what the ideal resonant frequency is, then you can induce or play those resonant frequencies into the object you want to reinforce, and then it'll make it healthy. It'll go from a state of dis-ease to ease or health. And so that's what cymatics is all about. But Gerson's treatment did something else. There's basically in your cells, you have all these different cell salts, potassium, magnesium, all sorts of things like this, and they have to be in the right balance to produce healthy cells. And when you eat too much sodium, specifically sodium chloride, which is in a lot of our foods, then that cell salt invades the inside the cell. It's supposed to be outside the cell. It's supposed to be an extracellular cell salt. And when that happens, that's when then you get a lot of inflammation responses. You get an inability to deal with toxins. Those build up in the body, and then you get the kind of macroscopic symptomology of sickness, which is cancer. So his treatment was specifically designed to basically restore the system, the body, from a cellular level, by introducing nutrients, restoring the proper cell, the salt balances in the body, and removing toxins. And so, yeah, that's what that is.
Wow, that's incredible. I haven't heard of this. I've in the conspiracy theories, you hear a lot about the sound healing, and you hear about uh, it's generally just spoken of technologies, these new technologies that are going to heal everybody. It's not really specified, but to hear that something in 1946 was documented as curing cancer, uh, and it was something as simple as that. Well, maybe it's more difficult than it sounds, but uh, that's just blowing my mind right now.
Okay, exactly. What you're experiencing right now is exactly what I experienced, when I heard about this. It just seemed, because we've heard the myth, and this is, we can get into a little bit of this if you like, but, how does the control system work? Well, it works because you need beliefs to organize your reality. And if the cabal can get you to believe something that isn't true, then now that belief blocks a greater truth. So if you walk around believing that there are no cures for cancer, but there's a crack team of doctors that are spending billions of dollars every year to cure cancer, and they're just pulling out all the stops, which is the kind of cultural myth we believe in, then the idea that some guy with a bunch of juices and coffee that he'd ask you to put up your butt is somehow going to cure cancer, it just seems crazy, right? Clearly that can't be true. Well, that's not the case. So yeah, very interesting.
Well, I agree with you that uh, I mean, obviously, what you just said is all completely true, and the way that I think life works is much more simple than what's presented to us, and it's presented to us as these unattainable things, these unimaginable things are occurring, and they're so complicated and so hard to wrap your mind around that only a select few of people can do the mathematics to understand this, that it's the same way that religion back when Catholicism started was, only the Pope could talk to God, and then the Pope had other people that would speak to him, and so on and so forth. It's the same way that science is today, and everything gets made so complicated that it sounds so loony when you have something so simple. But the more that I study, the more I see exactly how simple life actually is. Like it's little subtleties that take meditation from the form of healing to medication. They switch the cross out for the crescent moon, and they tell you this is the way you heal yourself, medication. And it's like, no, it's actually the other way
Right.
around.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that what you're speaking of with the control system, that's exactly how they do it, because they make it appear that it's this impossible task. Uh, in this case, curing cancer is this impossible task that it's one day the Pentagon's going to announce it, and that's how we think things are going to occur. But it doesn't really occur to us that, these people are keeping the information from us for specific reasons.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, yeah, exactly. I mean, they want things to be overly complicated because then they get to become the solutions, or they are the solution to the overly complicated world. I mean, you know, one thing that you hear about a lot is that with respect to the legal aspect, the lawful aspect of the control system, which is a huge one, is, you're too stupid. You don't know any better. You don't know the law. You didn't go to law school. You don't know your rights. You know, you can't be trusted to manage your own affairs. And this is the way we're defined in the legal system is, the legal system, which is a huge topic and really fascinating if you want to understand who you are and how the control system works, and how to liberate yourself from study that. And one little just nugget I'll throw out there for you guys is that the legal system defines us as persons as dead, insane lunatics who can't be trusted. We're basically spiritual children. And under that presumption, they can take our rights away and give them back to us as privileges and do all sorts of things like that. So they are, so yeah, to zoom out, they need you to stay ignorant and stupid and not unaware of the greater truths so that they can control you, which means if you take the time every day to just study a little bit of something you don't know, you don't have to become Stephen Hawking tonight, just pick up something you don't know, just study a little bit and whittle away at it every day. That's how I know everything I know. Then you'd be surprised how quickly you can learn something, and it builds up a critical mass. It's like music's a perfect example. You're studying, you're trying to play the guitar and you're like, man, I'm just beating my head against this damn thing for 6 months, I can barely do anything. And then one day, poof, all of a sudden this thing you've been practicing, it's like learning a language, just comes right online, and it's like you've always done it. So basic idea with learning. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, this is the way that the world is running is not how life is supposed to be. It just isn't, and you can see it in so many different ways. And I like to use different analogies, but I like the one analogy that feels the best to me is that this game started as a type of Fortnite game where you get one life, you know, and you're supposed to do specific things. Or maybe you can do however you want, but you have a limited time and you know the rules. And somehow somebody stopped everybody from doing what they were doing, convinced them all to break out of their game, and somehow combined all the different games like Wreck-It Ralph style, broke free all of these other video games, thinking that they're doing the right thing by quote unquote freeing the people, but it just trapped everybody here.
Mhm.
And instead of it being, the United States being one video game and Europe being another video game, instead now we can travel through all these other video games and we think this is the whole universe. But this is just, this hallway of this arcade, basically. And they've been keeping us here and keeping us sick is very important. So anybody who was listening who isn't quite sure of why you would do all this, because spiritually speaking, our injuries, our physical injuries, are just symbolic or allegorical for our spiritual things that are happening, our mental and emotional and spiritual injuries that we're acquiring that need attention, so that when we pass, when our energy is supposed to die here and transfer over, we're getting stuck in this trap that we think we're not clean enough to go back to God, so that we come back to live a life. And we say, oh, well, we have to suffer because of the karma that I put on myself. I have to now suffer. But it's not true. And Jesus showed us it's not true. But uh, you can clear it all in one lifetime just by being a better person. By the moment you start awakening, that's how you clear it. It's to be the best person you can be. So it's very important that they keep us sick and ill, that we have to tend to our injuries and our illnesses, so that we can't learn the information. So that, because once you learn the information, you disregard all of the theater that they present us with. And once you disregard the theater, then you start focusing in on yourself and you start clearing your karma and your ancestral karma, and your DNA starts to be cleaned and rehealed and reworked. And once enough of us do that, then there is no power structure any longer. But I think it all begins exactly with what we started this little topic about, was curing cancer. If there's no cancer to worry about, then what else can we cure?
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. That's a really good way to put it. Yeah, I mean, time is spiritual currency. I know in some kind of new age circles, we tend to want to say like, oh, time doesn't exist. And, or in an old Grecian perspective, time is like a tyrant, death is symbolic of time and Chronos and things of this sort. So, if we can just escape time, wouldn't it be so great? But when you spend your time wisely, then you get to manifest certain results. And, one of the things that the Cabal does so well is they get you to be distracted on unattainable goals. I mean, here's a pretty good example of kind of what I'm talking about here and what you're talking about, which is uh, um, dysmorphia. So dysmorphia is the inability to see what is the proper form, right? Morphology, form, disease. And so if you think about it, if you're trying to, if you, like here, we have a pretty good problem on this world with age dysmorphia, right? How are you supposed to age? Well, we're told through the media that you're not supposed to age, that if you're aging, that there's something wrong with you, that you're sick, you're going to look old and ugly. And so we spend all this time and money trying to avoid the inexorability of time. And so that by the time you're 40, 50 years old, and this is especially true for women because they get the assault like really heavy with the cosmetic industry and things of this sort, you're going to feel very uncomfortable in your own skin because you believe that you are something you shouldn't be. And you're going to spend a lot of mental time and energy trying to become something you're not. And boy, doesn't that chew up a lot of your free time, the time that you're supposed to be using to get spiritual. But, one thing that happens if you just embrace the truths that need to be embraced, then now you free up, you're not resisting anymore. And now you have the space to really become all you were meant to be. We'll put it that way. So yeah.
Yeah, then the way I see time, I've had shown to me is that it's kind of like high school where you have different blocks scheduled out for the day. You know, you have first period, second period, third period, so on. Well, we get blocks of time scheduled into our day before we come in that are reflection time. You know, I like to call them study halls. That so what ends up occurring mostly is that we do something wrong and then we reflect on it. Uh, and you reflect on it at different times throughout your day. You're doing, you know, something mundane and what it replays in your head the situation you had earlier. Well, when you're having negative situations and you don't know how to clear that karma, you just dwell on that same situation over and over and over, and you don't see the bigger picture that that scenario is just one of many similar scenarios in which you aren't responding the right way. So once you do clear that karma, then that time you're spending reflecting upon one situation and that you think is unlinked, and you're wasting your time and energy, you know, thinking about that one woman in the parking lot that cut you off and how mad it made you, and you're talking about this to yourself, this negative self-talk. So then the universe is like, oh, that's what they want more of, so I'm going to give them more of that. And it's a cycle that you don't know what you're doing. So once you recognize it and you start clearing your karma, then it gets to a point where you're now open. And instead of reflecting upon a past situation, you're reflecting upon what could be. And and you're also open to receiving new information to reflect upon. So you start getting a more grand picture of what life is, what's going on here. And that's when I started really tapping into my psychic abilities is once I cleared my karma and understood that I didn't even understand it at the time, but I knew I wasn't dwelling on the negative any longer. Once I wasn't dwelling on the negative, it made it so much easier for me to start receiving the information the way that I do now. Yeah. So, did you do any types of? So you said 2010 is when you started waking up.
Yeah.
So were you big in? Did you get there through conspiracies, or did you get there through spirituality?
Um, well, initially it was the cure for cancer thing.
Right.
Like, so it was conspiratorial. Like it was the juxtaposition of believing that we had no cures for cancer and then learning of information that invalidated that belief. And in the process of invalidation, something that was creating order, which is the belief that there were no cures for cancer, created disorder. And then I had to deal with that disorder by facing it. And that's the choice, right? Like, so when disorder presents itself, whether it's you lost your job, you broke up with your family, you believe that you realize that there are people out there that have no problem killing hundreds of thousands of people every year because they know about cures for cancer and they're suppressing them, then that chaos, if you face it using bravery, then the order making principle of your own spirit and being then can take that situation and create order, a new order, a better order, a spiritual order. So yeah, initially it was cures for cancer. Then I watched a bunch of Alex Jones. I was just like, this was the kind of the golden years of YouTube where you could actually find good stuff on YouTube. I don't know.
Right.
Um, so I was just like watching a ton of like free documentaries and reading all sorts of books and articles and anything I could find to get my hands on. I wanted to know about it. And at the time, I was still an atheist. And then I think it was somewhere in early 2011, maybe to that later 2010. I can't even remember exactly, but I discovered, the ufology and extraterrestrials and UFOs, and then later channeling. And I kept encountering channeled messages after I started looking at them with people talking about the creator and spiritual growth and souls. And it just, I at the time I didn't really have a lot of understanding of religion, so it just sounded like religion to me. It sounded like, Catholicism in space, basically. And so it just kind of like, I didn't know what to make of it. And so I looked more into it, and really well, it was kind of three works. Conversations with God was something that really introduced me to the idea that maybe there was something to this whole God thing, although I was still pretty skeptical at the time. Then the Law of One made me start to believe that, well, maybe the idea of God is real, but the religious version of it maybe isn't as real as I've been told. At least I thought at the time. And then it was studying that material I came across the Urantia book, and that's really what sold me. Like, the description of God combining all three of those bodies of work made so much sense to me logically and scientifically and philosophically that I had to set aside my atheistic bias and be like, well, wait a minute, it seems like God really is the best explanation for everything. Let me see how far I can go with this new idea. And here I am 10 years later, and I'm still chugging away at it. So yeah.
See what you were just saying there with the Catholicism of space. That was funny. I like when I speak about spirituality, I mix a lot of Christianity with UFO spiritual and spirituality type things, and it's just the information that I pick up. It kind of transcends every category, and I don't label myself as anything, but I could label myself as anything because I could see myself as I do some Buddhist stuff, I do some agnostic Christian stuff, I do some alchemized or spiritually alchemized things. I'm doing all these different things. So it rang so true to me when you said Catholicism in space, because it breaks the person that I used to be. Hearing the stuff that I talk about now, it would have broke my brain. Like, wait a minute, I didn't believe in God, and now you're telling me, God and alien. Like, does God and aliens all exist? And it just didn't make sense. But now the way I know the world, it makes total sense. Uh, the Book of Urantia, I bought that on your recommendation
Mm.
from the Edge of Wonder series, and I wanted to study about Jesus because it blew my mind. I was like, oh wait, there's information out there about Jesus that isn't in the Bible and actually Christians don't know about. So I started reading about Jesus, and I got to age 29, and for some reason I never went back to it. But that's
Mm.
how it kind of goes with me. I do things until I'm supposed to do it, and then I'll come back to it when I'm supposed to, when I'm drawn to it. But I have it, sitting right there. Maybe it'll be time soon. But I see you're wearing a cross now,
Hmm.
uh, and I I like I don't I do have a cross, and I'm wearing a shirt right now that's a lion and a lamb, you know,
Nice.
uh,
Yep. Yep.
the reflection, and I wear a lot of Jesus stuff. I love Jesus, and the cross and what it represents. Uh, what was I going to say? To go from an atheist not believing anything to getting into the spiritual world and learning about all the esoteric, the Middle Eastern mysticisms, the all the different Kabbalah. I mean, I've studied loosely. I've looked into a lot of different things, and the whole time I was not into Jesus or Christianity at all. And then as I learned more and more, it made me realize that all of the true beginning teachings of Paul and Christianity, I mean, I've come to understand that is 100% correct. And people say, oh, well, Christianity, it took from paganism and it took from the Egyptian, from religions before it. And it's like, well, you got to stop right there because there was no religion before it. It was just the truth. And, you just had the truth was passed down in all these different uh, places around the world. Ancient Egypt and ancient North America is how I got into my awakening, and
Mm-hmm.
they were teaching all the same thing. So it wasn't that it was being stolen from another religion. It's actually just no, that this is the truth, and they're all sharing the same knowledge. It's not that it's being stolen, it's just true. And then the other stuff was just added on because it happened in a time and space that was a literal geographical area where this literally took place, and it was literal accounts. And it blew my mind once I realized that it so many different things had so much in common, and that it wasn't borrowing from other religions. It was just it was truth. And uh, and I see that you have a similar understanding to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the one of the things to understand once you start to open your mind up about, especially the history of religions is and these sort of things, is that, let's see, how can I say this? Okay, so when you first encounter religion, it brands itself as having always been perfect. Like, Catholicism descended from heaven, it landed on earth, everything was just perfect. They knew all about all the rights, all the churches were, the organization was perfect, everything just was like magically perfect. They never had any issues. Well, that's not really the case, obviously. What most religions, the substance of a religion, where it comes from, is somebody who had the time and energy and the dedication to try to seek truth beyond the cultural myths they were raised in, to advance some type of spiritual knowledge. That person, because when you dedicate yourself to spirit, you're basically deciding, or you're exercising the muscles of being that allow you to pull knowledge from anywhere in reality, then that person's going to accumulate a lot of knowledge. Then that person's going to become like the leader or alpha of a certain sector group. And people are going to start to kind of worship them, as what tends to happen with, people who gain success and status. And as an example for that phenomenon, look at the way we treat celebrities right now. Um, and then, over a few generations, that person becomes canonized. They become turned into a saint, and before you know it, it's like their life is a distorted kind of caricature of what actually happened in their life. And then you get this kind of progression of religion. So, but the substance of a religion is just like the substance of any other body of knowledge. It's, my perspective on reality is filled with certain truths, but I don't have it all figured out because I'm seeing reality from this one vantage point. Same with you. You've got all these accumulated knowledge and truths, but you're not seeing reality from my vantage point or anybody else's vantage point. So to say that your version of reality is the only truth is obviously not correct, right? A good example I like to use for this is, imagine a whole bunch of people watching a baseball game. Whose perspective on the game is the correct one, and everybody else is wrong? Well, the answer is everybody's perspective is correct, but it's a little different. So eventually, I would argue, at a world such as ours, the spiritual progression of the world is, it initially begins with kind of like king of the hill versions of spiritual growth, like, my religion, my perspective is the only one that's right, and I'm going to smash you into the ground if you say otherwise. And then that kind of proceeds on. That kind of infantile, immature perspective of religion is the thing that proceeds across time. And then eventually somebody, a revolutionary, is like, well, wait a minute, that dude's religion over there, there's a lot of crossover with what I believe. Maybe instead of trying to kill anybody who isn't what we think of as the correct religion, maybe we need to take all of them, put them together, and weave a greater tapestry of truth together. And that's kind of the basic underlying positive component of the Catholic model. Catholic meaning universal, So, yeah, so the bottom line is that there is no perfect religion out there. There's no perfect version of spirituality. They all have some piece of the puzzle, and if you know how to if you get good at panning for spiritual gold using the philosopher's stone of critical thinking, as I like to say, then you can start to pull all these golden threads of truth from all these different places, and you get your own personal, like, living, version of spiritual growth that I think is important. And one thing I want to mention real quick about my cross, because I know some people ask me, like, all the stuff about, like, the corruption of the church and all these things, what are you wearing a cross for? Because the cross is kind of, it's symbolic of the Son of God who descended on earth, and then we killed him in some kind of, like, borderline satanic ritual sacrifice. Like, what are you wearing that symbol for? Well, there's multiple reasons why I wear the symbol. One is because at a social level, part of the challenge of being a living being on earth is you got to find other people that you can be in community with. You have to. The creator created the universe specifically for humans in that way. Like, humans have to work together. We're not like animals where you can just go live on the land. You don't have to wear clothes. All of your needs will be paid for by eating leaves and drinking water out of a brook. I mean, no. Our human beings are designed weak for a reason, I would argue. It's because the spiritual growth that the creator's trying to get us to embrace is social interactions. How are we going to manage our rights? How are we going to manage our needs together? We have to create social groups, and those social groups are defined by what you believe and what you value. And so I wear this cross partially because I want other people to know that I'm a Christian, and I would label myself as a Christian. Now, the substance of my faith is different than your average, like, card-carrying Catholic, but the substance is there. And I do believe that the idea of Jesus coming to this world as a true sovereign, meaning savior, meaning an individual who pursued truth and sought after God in his life to the extent that he developed wisdom and a type of right perspective and philosophy that we can embody as a kind of model for our own lives. As in, when we as humans, despite the fact that the world is unfair, seek the truth, seek for knowledge, and seek to become our brother's keeper and love each other as, God loves us, can't we do amazing things? That is something that I think is reflective of this symbol. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there for everybody.
And I love that it's an open box, because I like it. Once I learned about that, I was like, oh, that helps me embrace it more, because if you box it up, it's a cube, the black cube. And what better than an unboxed person, an unlimited person, than the sign of the cross? And it means so much more than just, I know, because people have a lot of statues of Jesus hanging on the cross, that there's a big, or used to be a big Bill Hicks joke about it. That's the last thing Jesus would want to see if he came back. And it's like, that's such a limited perspective, because it means so much to so many people, and it's such a good sign. And it's just used in so many different ways that, of course, he would be happy. Jesus loved his captors, he loved everybody. And that's what I really take away, is that no matter what someone's doing to you, if you give them love, then we don't get to that point. And I've had so many different telepathic communications and visions that involve Jesus and other beings, and it's overwhelming, uh, in my studies, that I've seen that consciousness itself, which is God, which is source, which is creator, the entirety of the cloud of consciousness that surrounds this universe and creates this universe, took the shape of Jesus Christ, of his man made. It went from just the image of God, which was a man, which was like a uh, bathroom symbol for a man, just that the image of God, right? Went from
Mm-hmm.
that to being a specific person because of what Jesus did. And it was like, he won the game. He became the trophy. He became like, Ready Player One. He won the game. Everyone else was running the race forward, and he went backward. He went internally to become God when everyone was externally trying to become God. And consciousness was like, this guy has it. Everybody be him because he is me. And now that's why you have millions and millions of people have these visions, these dreams, these all these different things of Jesus saying, "Come here, my son. Come here, my daughter. That the time is coming near where that I am coming back." And it is so hard to imagine all these spiritual people. I know they all think the I am is makes them the creator, but they're just a piece of the
Right.
creator. But
Mhm.
what Jesus Christ, not Jesus the person, but Jesus Christ represents something so much larger that it is not just I am, it is all of us. We are all equal and we are all creators and we are all pretending to be who we are in order to serve a purpose to fill this theatrical role that we're in right now. But there is so much truth in this game. And I want to bring this to the hero's journey because you enlightened me to, the hero becoming the tyrant. And I had already heard about the hero's journey, but you broke it down so very well. And before I have turn you loose on this subject, I just want to say that, if this is a video game, if this is a simulation, if this is a dream, and this is the hero's journey, then this world, if you think of it in terms, if you go in a Grand Theft Auto world, if you go in a Fortnite world, there's different ads all over the place, just like there is here. And there's different things that it'll tell you about the video game, little Easter eggs that are hidden all throughout the video game, like there is here. But there is always overlapping things that point to the truth, whereas everything here is telling you that the hero, if this is the hero's journey, the hero is Jesus. If this is a dream, then there would be one. Who would be the dreamer? It would be the hero. And who's the hero? Overwhelmingly talked about throughout history. It's been pointed to, it was prophesied about, it happened, and now it's millions of people have living testimony to it. I mean, to me, I've come to the easy conclusion that it has to be. If this is the hero's journey and this is a dream, then it has to be, for me anyway, that Jesus has to be the hero and the dreamer. So why don't you maybe start with what the hero's journey is for anybody listening who doesn't know what that is?
The hero's journey.
Yeah.
Sure. The hero's journey is it's a way of understanding a story, or sometimes a way to organize a story. Hollywood uses this, for example, pretty extensively, from what I've heard. And it was developed by Joseph Campbell. He, in his book, Hero with a Thousand Faces, I believe, or Hero of a Thousand Faces, something like that, looked at myths all around the world, all across history, and tried to distill the essential kind of template or framework from all myths and came up with this idea of the hero's journey. And, the very short version of it is that it's kind of like the story of a child becoming an adult, or an immature soul becoming a mature soul, something of this sort, or even better, a potential son or daughter of God becoming an actual son or daughter of God, like an actual instanced version, a personification of the creator within their own lives. So some basic components of the hero's journey is that the hero often starts out, and if you want to look at some really good examples of this, there's probably a million and one to choose from in Hollywood. Some really good examples that come to mind for me are the Frodo from The Lord of the Rings. It's probably one of the best versions, I'd say, and might be the most easy for people to think of because it's an extremely popular story. So Frodo, we'll use that as an example. Frodo is living in where all his needs are met. He's living in the Shire. Everything's perfect. Like he's got this perfect community. He's got his established life. Um, everything's going well for him. Everything that he could possibly need is there for him. His food, his water, his family, social connection, everything's beautiful. But the world isn't perfect. Even though the world is perfect in the Shire, the whole world is not perfect. So in the safety of being in a child, when you're a child, you're in your parents' house. You're in this little safe cocoon. You're in the womb, to use that analogy. And you have to come out of the womb, and coming out of the womb doesn't feel nice. You go from this place where everything's warm and cozy and you have all your food and mom's around you 24/7. There's no point in time you can ever not have mom around you. And you actually get ripped out of that. You're in this cold, dry place. You don't have mom near you as much. You got to cry for your food. You got to deal with bodily function. I mean, yeah, it's a crazy situation, right? So same thing with Frodo. Like he's ripped from his nescience, or his unawareness of the true state of the world. He's unaware of the mission at hand, that there's a potential to make the world a better place. But they need somebody to embody that potential. They need somebody who's willing to sacrifice their ease, their comfort, their innocence to become a hero and save the world. And so that's kind of the idea of the hero's journey. So the hero is in this initial state of being unaware, of nescient, of things being, comfortable and easy and seemingly perfect and idyllic, but only within a local circumscribed space. And then that something happens where the hero's life starts to fall apart, often because they encounter something, they discover something. It's like their world gets destroyed. And for Frodo, it was the discovery of the ring, and what happened with Bilbo, that Bilbo discovered the ring. And why would Bilbo want to leave the Shire? I mean, it's all great. Well, Bilbo has this call for adventure. He knows that, once you realize that there is something to be done in the world, you can't go back to being, an unaware kid anymore. It eats away at you, and your sense of peace breaks down. A very similar analogy. I think this is understanding the hero's journey and how you are the hero of your own life, that there is a special mission that you, whoever you are listening to my word, the sound of my voice, that you came to this world for. And if you embrace that mission, not only will you have the most fulfilling life you can possibly imagine, but you'll also make the world a little bit better. That is something that eats away at people. So, a really good analogy for this is you're in a relationship, everything's great, but you realize that something you've been doing over the course of the year, 5 years, 10 years in your relationship isn't actually the best, but you've been doing it forever. So like, what, you can't go back on what you've been doing, or you're gonna have to explain yourself, and your significant other is going to be like, well, man, you've been doing this thing forever. Why are you changing your mind? And you're gonna have to talk to them about why you're changing your mind and how you might have made a mistake. And it's going to cause a little bit of chaos to come about. But in the result of dealing with that chaos, you're going to create a better order. You're going to create a better lifestyle. Well, that's kind of what happens, is like the hero can't just go back to being unaware anymore. Once they know that there's like this doom that's going to come, then they have to face it. And so I think that's the journey that we're all living in right now. So just take a divergent for a minute. Like, if you're living unawoke, if you don't know about the fact that there's a cabal, if you don't know about the fact that cures for cancer exist, and people have been dying, which is my hero's journey moment, then life seems pretty good. I mean, there's corruption and stuff in the world, but hey, I mean, it's 21st century, right? We got cell phones. You can spend all of your days watching Netflix. I mean, how awesome is that, right? Well, turns out that it's not so awesome. And as soon as you realize that there is something wrong with the world and that you could do something about it, it eats away at you. And that's what happens. The hero realizes that after a certain period, after they've had their initiation, that they can't go back to the way things were, and they have to leave the safety and comfort of the womb, of their comfort zone, to go out and do something. And when they go and face the challenge, then they're going to, as a result of that interaction, they're going to manifest new powers and abilities, things that they didn't know were there before, new skills. And that's also what happens to Frodo. He doesn't realize that he can, wield these weapons and deal with these burdens and things like this. But eventually he realizes he can, and he takes the ring to Mordor, and he throws the ring of power into, Mordor, and it destroys the ring, and the world's made better because now Sauron, the evil lord, is no longer in the world. So, to relate all that to the spiritual journey, the hero's journey is basically a kind of recipe or way of thinking about all living beings. Everybody goes from a state of unawareness. You're 5 years old, you don't know how crazy the world is. You're 15 years old, you don't know how crazy the world is. You're 30 years old, you don't know how crazy the world is. And you have to be willing to break down your own uh, illusions of safety and comfort. And you might be wondering, like, well, why the hell would I want to do that? Isn't it better to live in ignorance and have a little peace than to face the truth and destroy your sense of comfort? Isn't it better to ignore the fact that your significant other cheated on you 10 years ago and you just discovered it a couple of weeks ago and just pretend like nothing happened than to face the truth and confront them and settle this? Well, no, it's not, actually. And this is one of these, the fact that it's not good to ignore the truth for temporary ease and comfort, I think, is one of the best examples of the fact that there is a creator and that you were designed for spiritual growth, because it will eat away at you. And what happens is you have to let the old version of you die, and then a new version of you rises from those ashes. And so when you let yourself die, to put it in those terms, it might sound a little scary, like, man, what does that mean? Well, when you say die, what it really means is transformation. So it's very similar to, like, what happens to a caterpillar when they become the chrysalis and then they emerge as the butterfly. Like the caterpillar has these arms and legs and this whole body shape, right? Well, when it goes into the chrysalis, it goes through a willing dissolution process. It mirrors the alchemical school of thought. You have to go through digestion, putrefaction, rarefaction, all these things, right, to distill the essential aspects of who you are. And then those reemerge in a new form that is different than what came before. So, imagine if we lived in a world where everybody realized that they have a piece of the puzzle that can make this world so unbelievably joyful, amazing, blissful, happy, adventurous, fulfilling, et cetera, where there's no more evil, there's no more corruption, people don't have to suffer anymore, all these things. We could have that world. This isn't, and I'm not talking about the communist utopian, fallacy either, by the way. I'm talking about something that's very real and attainable. What if you realize that? What would you do with it? What would you do if you knew that you had a piece of the puzzle and we couldn't have the world and you couldn't have the world that would be the ultimate best if you didn't take that ring and come out of the Shire and try to do something with it? Wouldn't that eat away at you? So yeah, Hero's Journey is really amazing. It's something I think is, I often dream about, like, if we could remake the education system and to be better, what would we teach people? And I think that is, like, one of the biggest parts of our re-education. So
Yeah. Well, everything you just said there describes everyone's spiritual awakening, and I even have it to the point of the not being able to go back and live a lie. Like, if I go past a piece of trash that's on the ground, I'm conscious about, when I am aware of it. If I'm aware of it and I walk past it, I'll take maybe 10 to 20 steps sometimes, and I'm like, nope, I gotta go back and I gotta pick it up because I'm aware of it. I can't just let it sit there any longer. And I mean, I am that way when someone lies to me. I don't just let it go. And because I'm an empath, I can feel when they're lying, and their words don't match their energy, and I'm just like, like, I can feel you're lying, and now you're lying on top of your lying, and it's making me angrier and angrier. And if you would have just acknowledged the truth in the first place, then, or if I could have this sense of just letting go the lie, if I could be at peace with that, then I wouldn't be in the situation I'm in. And it's just like, man, it really sucks. Uh, but I love what you're saying with the hero's journey, and I don't want anyone to think that what I was saying before that takes away or is in place of what Justin just described. Because what Justin just described is exactly the hero's journey. Everybody does go through the hero's journey. I was just saying it on a as above, so below scale, on there has to be eventually there has to be a one or a largest component that they're just as above. There has to be on a if there's in my household, if I'm the one that's going through it, and if my neighborhood were the house that's going through it, and the county were the neighborhood that's going through it, and the state were the county that's going through it, it's as above, so below on each level. And once you get to the top, there has to be one hero's journey for everybody, for the entirety. That's just my feelings on it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I just wanted to, I started it with my crazy, I'm a crazy guy words, and then you so elegantly described what the hero's journey is, so that anyone who is listening can hear that, maybe there is something to Jesus being the hero in this hero's journey.
Yeah. Can I speak to that for a moment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, one of the interesting things about the Urantia book, although this is reflected elsewhere, is it discusses the necessity of revelation. So just to make sure everybody's with me when I talk about these things. So I'm comparing revelation to discovery. So there's a lot of things that human beings can figure out, right? We can figure out a lot, but there's some things that are shrouded in mystery that the only way for us to know is if somebody tells us. And so what the Urantia book discusses, and is discussed in a bunch of different places, is the idea of revelation, and that's described as bestowal. So bestowal is when, or here is a precondition to what I'm about to say. So in the Urantian version of the universe, which also they discuss, it's Christianity, it's discussed in Vedic schools of thought, it's discussed in Sufism, it's discussed in all sorts of places. So it seems to be a pretty standard concept, and I think it has a lot of validity. You have God, who's up here, then you've got the Trinity, and then you've got the beings that the Trinity created, which is like God, on any number, massive amount of highly evolved, created perfect beings, like beings that don't have to evolve to reach their full potential. They'll just created existentially perfect, right? Well, then there are beings that evolve from the lower end. So you got beings that are, this is God up here, you got beings below, and they, like us, that we are those lower order beings. In the Urantia book, they call them lowly beings. And sometimes when people hear that, they're like, oh, it's so arrogant, like lowly, like, no, that's not the point. It's not that they're like, throwing spitballs at us from way the heck up in heaven. What they're saying is that we get to participate in the adventure of discovering that there's even a God at all. And then once that happens, then you get to choose whether or not you want to follow God or not, and then begin your spiritual evolution. Like, I mean, it's hard for us to conceive that that's as big a thing as it is, because that's our life, right? Like God, it's not necessarily obvious that there is a God and what the nature of God is and what your relationship to God is. And just the fact that that even happens, given the fact that all there is God, is like a massive miracle. Like, wow, like props to God for even creating a universe where I can sit here as a human being and believe that there's no God. Like, wow, isn't that crazy? So what happens is that the higher sons of God in the Urantia book, those are creator beings, they come down and they help evolve the other creatures. And then so there's this like meeting in the middle somewhere, something like that. And so the benefit to that type of situation is that it's kind of like a guide or recipe. Like there's a lot of things that you can do as an individual on your own, you can discover. But if somebody shows you, then it saves you a lot of time and energy, and it could save you a lot of hardship and whatnot. And there's just some things that you just can't figure out no matter how hard you try. That's the idea anyway. And so I think what I think is really cool about what you described is kind of like ultimate hero archetype, you might say, is that the creator, if the creator, think about it like from a video game perspective, if you built a video game and you wanted to come into your own video game to have fun, well, you were the creator. You could like manifest like the biggest, baddest weapons on the game, and you could like tweak the people that you're playing with so that your your hits were more impactful. So you could do all sorts of cheating, right? But that wouldn't really be fair, and certainly wouldn't help other players in the game become the best players that they need to be. So instead, you're going to incarnate, you're going to embody the same attributes as the other players in the game, and then you're going to play the game as if you were a human being. And that's what Jesus did. That's what's described in your answer book. This was described in Christianity. It's what's described in the Law of One and various other sources. So it's the idea of a kind of grand cosmic hero's journey. And I think there's a kind of, I know when I've read it, especially those portions of the Urantia book, I felt initially when I first read it, I'm like, oh, I don't know about this, like, because I had such a kind of aversion to religion. But the more, that was like actually my third time reading the Jesus section of the Urantia book, where I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I get it now. Like, God incarnated as an aspect of us as a human being, and went through all of the trials that human beings partake of for the most part, other than having children. And now that guide, that model for us is there, and we can use it. And this is part of what is meant by, Jesus, the way, the truth, and the life. It's that it's not like literally you have to do every single thing that Jesus did. It's the archetype, the grand hero component that I think is really important. So, yeah.
Yeah, and what you said there with the sons of God really resonated with me because I always am getting that there are beings that were in the middle, that there were beings that came down here, and there are also beings that are coming up from lower dimensions here, and so when you just said that, that just really resonated with me. Like, oh, we're showing them by, I went through a lot of different difficulties. This is what the crux of this podcast is. I went through all these difficulties and then I brought myself up out of it. Let me show you how. And that really resonated with me when you just said that.
Yeah. It's important. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what were some of the difficulties that you went through prior to your awakening that maybe triggered you, or not triggered, but propelled you into this direction?
Well, geez, from as early, one of the earliest things I can remember being a kid is there was just a lot of mystery around like how we lived life on this planet. One thing's I grew up with like a lot of classical and jazz music, and when I listened to pop music when I was a kid in the 80s, I just didn't really get like why people liked it so much. So I was really trying to figure that out. So that's kind of like a little example of a kind of deep sense of mystery. Like I just didn't understand, you know, why people treated each other the way they did. Why is it that we seem to have like all these principles, like we hear about the founding fathers and how, they created this really awesome country called the United States, and we have all these rights and everything. And yet there's just like corruption seemingly everywhere we turn. Like, how did that happen? And so, there was just a lot of, I always felt really early on in life that there was a lot of things that I wanted to understand. And I was really curious as a child, and, always throughout my life, I've always been just a really curious person. Like, why is it that, we do this that way? Or, why is it that music videos like always have the same kind of like archetype to them? And why is that trigger people as in activate some potentials? And, why does advertising work the way it does? How does spiritual growth work? Like, all these deep mysteries to things were always kind of hanging out in the background of my mind. And then when I woke up, I had my awakening experience. It just vivified all of that. And I spent a great deal of time just trying to jot down my thoughts and understand things. And, one of the things that I think is probably one of the most important elements to a good spiritual process is recognizing that as good as your knowledge is now, it's only an incomplete picture of the whole truth. And you always have to be willing to be wrong so you can be right. And so that's something that to this day I still have as my process, and we were talking about, what it takes for me to do the Into the Storm preparation and producing the seasons for Into the Storm and Edge of Wonder.tv. And, I spend, a long time, probably half the amount of time in production is just me researching and fleshing out what I think the information is, and then trying to invalidate it and playing the devil's advocate, and then really using that Socratean method to make sure if I'm going to say something, I'm like, yep, this is definitely the case. So, anyway, I digress a little bit, but yeah, those were the kind of the questions I was trying to figure out, like, what was the point of reality? What was the point of life? And I had a very inquisitive process of questioning everything, including my own answers. And that really, I feel like, helped prepare me for this later epic in my life.
Did that lead to other struggles in your daily life? Like as a teenager, did you go through anything? Did you not fit in? Did you feel like, you know, school, I'll say for me, I'm a very intelligent person. I can't learn the way school teaches me. I never had to study a day in my life. I would ace everything because my memory was really good. And it's just I'm so turned off to schooling that now to this day I don't read all that often, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier as well, that I get drawn to things, and then once I get out of it what I'm supposed to get out of it, I put it down. So there's so many books, unless it's a fiction book that I'm really entertained by, that I'll just read pieces of it here and there, and I'll tell myself I'm going to read it. Like the Book of Enoch, I pick it up all the time, and I guess for whatever reason I just get a little bit of it, and then my brain's like, okay, and it like self sabotages, and I'll put stuff on top of it, and I'll forget where I put it, and then 3 weeks later I'm like, oh, I never read the rest of that chapter. So it's the whole idea of school really turned me off to now. I'm limiting myself in that I really like to listen. I like my brain is very fast moving, so I like to be doing something while listening, and I feel it's very limiting to me if I'm just reading or if I'm just writing. Uh, it just takes too much time for me, and it's not as fast. So I like to listen, but uh, I forget why I was even just saying that. But uh, did that affect you? These big ideas that you had, did that affect you in that type of way or a similar way?
Yeah, although, it wasn't until my wake up experience that I really allowed myself to become uh, uncomfortable with the state of my knowledge or things in the world and actually try to do something about it. So, you asked, like, what did I struggle with? Um, like you, I did not like the school system. Going to school when I was in kindergarten and, first grade and things like this were very traumatic. I was a very kind of like playful, outspoken, extroverted kind of person. And then when I went to school, I was just shamed and ridiculed for my curiosity. Like I remember one time I was in first grade, and um, the teacher was asking some question. I can't remember the specifics, but I like jumped up in the middle of the class, like stood up and blurted out the answer because I was so excited to know what she was talking about. And she like made it a point to like make fun of me basically to the whole class about how unruly I was. And that happened, initially when it happened, I didn't really know what was going on. And then it dawned on me that like this person was, being disingenuous to me. And it kind of like, it created like a pretty nasty wound. Like I kind of just fundamentally didn't trust people implicitly. Like I always
Was
kind of
that
wondered, you know what I mean?
was that kindergarten you said?
First grade, although
First grade?
kindergarten was kind of the preamble to that.
Wow, uh, that can cause a wound in somebody, like you just said. That's not something your typical 30, 40, 50-year-old person who hasn't evaluated their life and everything that's happened they're not gonna look at that as a traumatic event that helped shape them, but I can get the sense that you're about to tell us, how that happened to you, and it is something that needs addressing because it is something that changed you in a negative way, over something that isn't all that big on the grand scheme of things, but it was your whole world was rocked in that moment.
Certainly, exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's, th- the the bottom line is that there's a lot of maladaptive, sick, diseased ways of thinking and doing things in our world. And because everybody does them, we just assume it's normal. And, yeah, of course, when you bring a kid home from the hospital, you should put it in another room and let it cry itself to sleep every night. That's what everybody does, and this is what a lot of people were told for a long time, although apparently now they're not telling new mothers to do that. So, but anyway, get back to the story. Yeah, I mean, school was a big challenge. I didn't really understand as a child, like what I had done to make my parents hate me so much to send me to school. I remember thinking that thought. I didn't understand the social structure. I kept being told I had to do this or that, and this especially was true in, the puberty years of you're supposed to, like, you know, date people and, be romantic. And, I just didn't understand. I mean, I knew why. I get it. I liked people, these things like this, but, there was all these traditions and norms and things like this that were there, and I didn't really understand them. So that kind of caused me some confusion. And then, one of the big things was being told that you can be anything you want when you grow up, that, the world is your oyster. If you want to be an astronaut, if you want to be an artist, if you want to do this or that, well, just study hard when you're in school, and, you're going to be able to have a career and survive and thrive, and people will appreciate you and respect you and support you as a person for your pursuits. And that's obviously not true. Like, anybody who's listening to this probably has dreamed about being whatever when they were like 6 to 10 years old. And then the cold, hard truth of, well, actually, you're going to have to go and get a crappy job. You have to go to college and you have to get a college degree, but that degree is likely not something that you're actually going to use. And now you're going to have to work your ass off for half of your life to pay back your college tuition that you didn't need in the first place. And your job is going to be awful and unfulfilling, and nobody likes it and everybody hates it. And it's going to be a nasty social influence in your life. Like, man, when I left high school, when I was in college, the delusions that we are fed as people in the modern day world, that you can be anything you want and, the world is your oyster, just was so hard for me to grapple with, that I ended up becoming a drug addict as partially to deal with it. And this is something I've been pretty open about. I had the worst drug addiction you can imagine. I was addicted to heroin and cocaine for like 2.5 years between the ages of like 19 and 22. And I know now, because of the psychology and spiritual psychology, as I like to call it, that addiction is a symptom of an unmet need. And the most critical need that you as a being have is not food or water or these kind of things. It's spiritual growth. You need to spiritually grow. And the way you grow spiritually is you explore and play and express what you know of life and things like this. And, in our world, there's none of that. We have a Prussian education model that's designed to not create empowered, sovereign souls that want to become the most spiritually evolved in their own lives. What we have is a Prussian education system that was devised by effectively, Satanists back in the day, that want to turn people into mindless working automaton machines that are glorified debt slaves. And that's the world we're living in. Um, so yeah, needless to say, that, like, this is one of these situations where, often in order to know that something is good, you have to experience its opposite. And we are living on a world that could, probably be themed as the hell that's leading towards a heaven, because that's the way the universe works, is that, all these bad experiences that we're all having, these traumas, we're living with corrupt forces, we got a corrupt education system, the legal system's corrupt, the medical system's corrupt, you name it, you pick any area of life. I can tell you about how corrupt it is. It seems pretty daunting and dark. As a matter of fact, so many people see the state of the world, and these are the Neil deGrasse types out there, Neil deGrasse Tyson types out there. They say, well, if God exists, then he must be a horrible tyrant that could give a flying F about you and the world and creation, because look how horrible things are. And my response to that is no, actually, the reason the world is so messed up is because free will is real. And we embodying the creation, what is the creation populated by? It's populated by creatures. We aren't perfect. We don't have it all figured out. Certainly, we don't have it figured out on this planet. And when we experience how wrong things are in our world, then it gives us a taste for wanting them to be better. And that activates us. And so, I think, similar to like the Chiron archetype, like when you become wounded, if you use bravery and courage and become the hero, then you face that wound, you heal the wound, and now you can have the ability to heal wounds like that, and you can go and heal other people. And, so I think that's kind of like the benefit of a world like ours, is that we're at a critical time in our spiritual evolution where all of these less than ideal ways of doing things, all of these spiritually wrong ways, I'll use that term loosely, of doing things, are now in our face. It's like we can't escape it, where the world's a messed up place, and it's partially because we don't know what the hell we're doing as souls. But when you see how something is wrong, you also see its inverse, the opposite, that it could be right. And maybe I can play a role in that rightness. And isn't that awesome? So kind of getting back to the whole hero's journey thing. So, yeah.
Well, that is definitely a lot in there, and the addiction thing. I see it now that everything that I've went through, and I was an addict for 10 years, off opiates, but really any type of pharmaceutical. I never got into heroin, meth, or cocaine, or crack. They're the four drugs that I never did. For whatever reason, maybe I would have got too caught up in it and it would have killed me. But for whatever reason, that wasn't my duty. But my duty was to become an addict and to experience the bad side of the world uh, in a certain sense, in a certain capacity, so that I would understand the world the way that I do now, so that I could relate to people in every facet the way I do. I see myself in everybody. I see everybody in myself, and it's really I'm really embracing the being the reflector on the human design. I'm really starting to understand just exactly how that plays a role in my has always played a role in my life, that I've always taken on the environment around me, and it's like I quickly figure things out for myself by just I absorb my whole environment. And when I look back on the choices that I've made, the free will decisions that I've come to, knowing that I'm a reflector that I've always been taking in my environment, well, it's no wonder I became a drug addict. I was in an environment where there's so many other drug addicts. And it's no wonder I felt so poorly about myself, because all the adults and authorities in the area made us feel so poorly about ourselves. And it was like I was, uh, maybe it wasn't even my feelings the entire time that I was feeling. Maybe I was embodying the entire universe, or not the entire universe, but my little universe. I was embodying it, and I was feeling all those other people's emotions, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And I wanted to tamp them down, and taking the drugs was led me to relief, uh, which then leads me into issues, which then you take the drugs to forget your own issues. So, it could have been all created from a false reality in the first place, that I was feeling something, and we're not, and, the way I was raised, you don't cry, I still, to this day, I have trouble crying. It's not that I have trouble, but I don't for whatever reason, that just doesn't naturally occur in me all that often. And when I do cry, it feels like something is reaching down and energy is reaching down through my head and like pushing something on my brain to make my eyes water rather
Mm.
than it just happen. And it's uh I don't know why that is necessarily, but I know that it was how I was raised was part of it. And it's not that my parents loved me and my parents, they wanted the best for me. But like you said, with the analogy, bringing a newborn baby home and sticking them in the other room, while they cry, and you're told to just leave it there. We normalize these immoral behaviors, and then when kids are 14, 13, 14, 15, and start rebelling, and then it's, oh, well, it's normal. Everybody does it. It's like, no, it's not normal. They're all doing it because everybody's doing them wrong. That's why it keeps happening that way. It's not supposed to happen that way. And it's very hard for somebody, like when I speak to my mother about this type of thing, she's like, "Oh, no, it's just normal." And I'm like, "No." And she has a very tough time understanding like the difference between normalizing immoral behaviors and something being normal. And I always tell everybody, I'm like, normal doesn't exist. It's a setting on a washing machine. There's average, if you want to use the term average. Like, I don't know that the average teenager rebels. Maybe the average teenager in America might rebel, but is it the average teenager in the entire world rebelling? I don't know about that.
Right. Yep.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, this is something really interesting. I've studied a lot of developmental psychology, and to speak to a point you're making right now, um, let's see, there's so much to talk about, but okay, so we'll put it this way. So if the basic premise is this, if you can meet the needs of a child and you know how to do that properly from within the womb all the way to 18 years old and they're about to go to college, then you're not going to have rebelliousness, I would argue. The reason rebelliousness takes place is because psychologically a person evolves and there's certain stages, just like a bird wants to jump out of the nest and fly on its own. The same basic thing happens for human beings. What is a better way to raise children? And this isn't like some like totally new way of doing it. This is stuff that has happened in the past. Is instead of having an authoritarian parenting model, which is you do what I say regardless, don't question me, just do it, execute it like the little good dog you are, you have a different model, which is here's the best way to deal with this. What do you think the best way is? Let's discuss how we can figure out what the best way is together. And now you're not doing what I told you, you're doing what you know to be the best way of doing things. And that develops autonomy and personal sovereignty and good critical thinking skills and judgment and discernment and all these amazing things. So when in the prepubescent initial stage of adulthood, I like to call them two different cycles. So you have 0 to 12 prepubescent. That's a whole cycle of maturity, you might say. So just before you go through puberty, they call it like the young, basically version of adult. That where we are most like adults. We talk like adults, we kind of interact like adults, but we're not adults, obviously, because we're only like 10 or 11, right? Well, at that stage, that's when your identity is associated with your family. So your family, you're trying to form a social identity that fits your family unit. If you've got a healthy family unit, of course, let's imagine that's the case. But eventually you need to be more than just the creature of your family. You have to become a creature of society, and you have to integrate with the herd. And so what puberty is all about, the introduction of the sexual process and the breaking of the familial bonds so that you can go and become not just a creature of your family, but a creature of society. If we lived in a healthy society, and there's various indigenous tribes, a pretty good example of this, the Trobriand is a really good example of this. They have initiation rites So when a young man who's going through puberty needs to stop sleeping with the children and start sleeping with the men, they bring him through an initiation rite. He realizes that there's a change happening, and there's a whole kind of like cultural hand-holding that happens where the culture is like, hey, that's about to be a man right there. Let's indoctrinate them, or not indoctrinate, initiate them into manhood. And now they willingly embrace this change, and now they're not necessarily just about sleeping with mom and dad anymore in the family hut. They want to go and be a part of the greater tribe. So that's a natural phase of human development, but we tend to suppress that in our current culture because we don't know what the hell is going on. We have no idea these deeper aspects of psychology, which aren't like mysterious. Jean Piaget, he developed a lot of this stuff back in the turn of the 20th century. If you just embrace that aspect, then the rebelliousness almost completely disappears. And you're basically, what you're doing is you're initiating your child into, your teenager into the greater world. And because you participate in that with them, you're not fighting them, they're actually working with you. And there's a whole bunch of really awesome examples to showcase all that. So, it goes back to this theme of initiation, of being willing. If you willingly break down your own barriers and your limitations, and you do that willingly, you can do all sorts of amazing things, including not have to have a really crappy teenage phase of your life or your kid's life. So
Yeah, and it all goes back to if that teacher of yours is loved as a child and as a young teenager and as an adult, and she never develops the ego that needs to protect her from this child who is now making her, he's calling her out by being so enthusiastic. Why isn't she enthusiastic? And now she has to belittle him and she has to show her power. But if she was loved from when she was a child, the right way, whichever way that may be, if she had the proper amount of love, then she doesn't then take her experience and throw it on you because you can't do that. I didn't do that as a child, so I'm not going to allow you to do that. And
right.
and who is she to you? Just she's someone who's supposed to be teaching you life at such a young age. And I see that with everything. That everything is that we're not getting enough love, and it does harken back to the newborn baby being or new parents being told the newborn baby needs to be in another room crying by himself, and let him cry it out. Like, no, maybe you should be with your child and try to understand instead of saying, what do you want, what do you want, just expecting the baby to talk to you. Try to understand, try to feel what the baby is feeling. And me being an empath and telepathic, that's what I do. It's magnified because I'm very in tune with it. But you want to, and it's something I've had my entire life, I noticed, because I would have it with my mother. Would have to weather the room when I got into any room. What's the temperature of the room? How does it feel? Is it okay to ask for something that I want? Is it okay to ask if I can go somewhere? Or, do I have to walk on eggshells? And a lot of people have that and they don't know that's empathy. That's an empathic, everybody does have it, but it's an empathic mental psychic ability, however you want to classify it. And if when you have that, you just need to tap into it. And the easiest way to tap into it is to be in the love frequency. When you're in the anger frequency, and or if I'm in the anger frequency and I'm trying to feel you, if I'm trying to understand you, I'm only going to understand the version of you that is angry at whatever the situation is. Or, I do this with my daughter to show her. She's 12 now, so it's funny, we're talking about that age, but she's going through her own little awakening. And I tell her, if you view the world from the eyes of annoyance, everything is going to annoy you. So if you're annoyed that dad's calling you, you know, you don't even know what it's going to be, but you're already annoyed. So if I say, hey, I got a puppy for you, or hey, you got to come home, you didn't do your chores, you're already annoyed. So no matter what is said to you, you're going to respond in a way that's going to perpetuate more hate, fear, anger, wrath, whatever those negative emotions are. But that's because I probably didn't do a good enough job at giving her the right amount of love before she developed that in her ego. So, and it's a whole thing, and I see the whole process happening with everybody in like every single moment. Well, not every single moment, but when things occur, I get a good sense of why it's that way, and it's usually because the lack of love or the lack of proper love at the right time. And I'm sure nobody, not nobody, but I'm sure most people love their children as much as they can. They want to do the best that they can, but they don't understand that the little subtleties that they're doing are then creating monsters. And you can be a awesome, as perfect as a parent gets 80% of the time, but if that 20% of the time you are putting your child down and you are doing the same repeated behaviors that were done to you, or maybe just behaviors that aren't correct, then you're creating a monster. And it's you're that child is living in karmic hell. And I see that I used to do it to my daughter and it was done to me, and we're both breaking free of it, but it's all about love. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think you got a lot of it spot on. You know, the love is essential. You got to have love guided by wisdom. Love is a word that it's kind of been bastardized a lot. So, you got to define it properly. I'm sure you would agree. So, but the point is yeah, you gotta guide love with wisdom, because love is like an energetic force. And, most parents don't think of themselves as bad parents. Most parents love their children. Most parent wants the best for their children. But we've been sold this lie that you just because you have ovaries or because you have testicles that you're going to magically know how to raise kids when you have kids, and that's not the case. As a matter of fact, raising a kid might be the single most incredible challenge that any human being ever partakes of ever. And so there's a lot of wisdom and knowledge and skills and things to know, that are going to make your life a lot better if you seek out those things. And the other thing I wanted to touch on, what you said, I think is spot on, is that, um, even if you do everything right, there still are going to be issues, because it takes a village to raise a child. Like, you can't raise a child in isolation. Your daughter is exposed to media, I don't, unless you're raising her where she never leaves the house, which is probably doubtful. She's going to encounter social media. She's going to see things on this social media device and in movies and TV shows, and hear from her friends and all these things that are going to influence the heck out of her. And that's going to play a massive role in who she becomes. And, you know, so there's a there's a great need to really kind of develop good, practical, useful skills when it comes to parenting. Because I would say, if we want to ask ourselves, what is the single greatest source of all the problems that humanity faces, I think the answer unquestionably is how we raise our children. If we figured out better ways to raise our children, then almost every problem you can imagine would disappear. Like almost all forms of antisocial or criminal behavior, rape, pedophilia, incest, drug addiction, corruption, lies, manipulation, you name it, it would all basically disappear if we knew how to raise our kids properly and we had a culture that was actually healthy and things of this sort. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I actually, uh, if we took society right now and we just removed media and government, I believe that that would heal a lot. Even the way society is today, I think that a lot of problems would be solved by removing those. But if we do, since we do have those things, we have those systems, if we could use them to the proper way, uh, if we could somehow use these structures, it would eliminate so much of, I mean, we could essentially we could fix all the world's biggest issues in probably 1 decade. And we can talk about how cancer would probably go away if we weren't being cancerous towards each other. It's a manifestation of free will, as you were discussing earlier, saying the free will, and yeah, like how Neil deGrasse Tyson says, it's not that God is allowing it. It is allowed because if it wasn't allowed, then the creator wouldn't put that code into the creation to allow it. But it is us who are we are choosing to do this. And it might not be our own sovereign free will that we're making these choices. We're influenced, of course, and we're being led by things and people and systems that are leading us down the negative path. But it is once you are in face to face with the decision. Well, actually, let me talk about with Neil deGrasse Tyson. It is definitely makes it that there is a creator because, like you said, the free will, but it is the duality that is happening. That it is a perfect little dance uh, to in order to propel us forward, we have to look at the issues. And in order to look at the issues, then the issues will become more prevalent issues just for the simple fact that we are looking at them. So, therefore, it's going to present itself in a bigger, larger way than maybe it actually was before, and maybe it actually is now. But it seems like it's a bigger issue because we are highlighting it. Just like if you go buy a PT Cruiser and all of a sudden you start seeing PT Cruisers everywhere. It's not that everyone just bought one. It's just that it's in your awareness now. So it seems like a bigger issue. So when we're trying to solve these different world issues, they seem like issues when actually, maybe they're not issues at all. And maybe they're becoming issues because someone's telling us it's an issue. And if we just stopped thinking about it, or I don't want to say stop thinking, but if we weren't wasting our time on something that wasn't real, we could be spending our time on something that is real. Like, I'll just say, for example, climate change. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, of course the climate changes. I was taught that in third grade. Climate's always changed. There was an ice age, and all these different things have gone on. And plants used to be huge, and there used to be these humongous creatures that lived here. Of course, there was more carbon dioxide, way more carbon dioxide then than there is now. So how are they saying it's dangerous now? How are we killing the earth by putting into the atmosphere something that the plants then take in and they produce more oxygen, which produces more carbon? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, I know climates change. So like I was saying in the beginning of this little soliloquy, that it's government and media to me are the two overwhelming factors that make us have our society in this way. That it is distract us with the entertainment, and hypnotize us with the entertainment, sexualize everything, normalize immoral behaviors, and then you have the government come in who is going to boss you around, and then they're going to take your money so that they can make a subcommittee to boss you around more, but then they need more of your money because they need another subcommittee, and then these subcommittees are going to then create these private agencies that then can set these new regulations that aren't even voted upon. And it's just so much fuckery going on, but it all extends from bread and circus, from the
Mhm.
government and the media. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. You know, the media, especially mass media, is designed to manipulate what people believe and what they value. Um, Specifically, Hollywood and story. Cultural. Let's see, how deep do I want to go with this? Yeah, well, so what makes a society what it is? It's that a bunch of people who believe basically the same thing at some level. So there's some similar beliefs and value the same thing, get together, and they want to try to deal with the trials of life together. And so, because you can't know for sure if everybody around you believes the same things you do, you need what's called a cultural myth, a mythos, to a narrative to organize your society. And so, the media across history has played a role in doing that. Like, the bigger your society, the more you need that cultural mythos. And so, religion and media have played, essentially religion was media for most of human history, right? Um, if you were living in ancient Greece and you were living in Athens, then you had the democratic ideal, and you had various gods and goddesses that had stories that everybody knew, and you could, because everybody knew the same basic story, and you had the same basic needs, needed food, you needed water, you needed shelter, you needed to explore art, you wanted to do philosophy. So those things that the ancient Greeks did, you generally assumed that probably everybody, at least at some level, wanted to participate in that with you. And so that's part of what the media is designed to do. And it's needed because, we're not, maybe in some future we'll all be telepathic and we'll all know exactly what everybody's thinking, but we don't live in that world yet. So that's part of what the job of media is designed to do. And it's been hijacked. It's been hijacked for a very long time. You might say that the thing that the forces of darkness have used throughout history is the corruption of mass media, so you can control what other people think if that makes any sense. And the really good example of what we're talking about is mass media with respect to relationships. Like, how do you think about what a relationship is supposed to be like? How much sex do you think you're supposed to have in your relationship? What are you supposed to do in your relationship? Are you going to go on dates? Why are you going to go on dates? Why is that a thing? Why do we go on dates? Well, it's because if you're like most people, you've had pounded into your head from like very early on that what you do when you're interested in somebody romantically is you ask them out on a date. And there's all these things. You go to the movies, you eat dinner. So it's like there's all these things that get thrust onto you, and when you're very impressionable, that come from the cultural media store. And so that's part of what media is designed to do. Obviously, it can get corrupted. So I would argue that while a huge amount of corruption and degradation of society happens through media, mass media in and of itself is not evil. It's not that media is evil, and if we just got rid of media, then paradise would blossom like tomorrow. No, it would have to transform because media is a tool, and any tool is amoral. It can be used to do something good or can be used to do something bad. Government's the same thing. Government is at a lawful level, at the pure concept of what a government is a bunch of people who have rights, who have free will. They want to create a system that allows our rights and free will to be protected and our values, right? So I don't want to live in a world where I have to be worrying about my neighbor murdering me. You don't want to live in a world where you don't want to be murdered either. What if we create a system where our desire not to be murdered can be invested into a person who's like, listen, I want to be the guy that makes sure nobody's murdering people. Well, that's a police officer we just described, right? So this idea of government as being a place where the individuals who have inalienable rights pool those rights together via the consent of the governed to create a society and a government that then protects and safeguards their rights and fosters them so that we can use them to prosper is a very important thing. And so media and government are tools. However, they've been corrupted. and they've been corrupted because we as individuals, we've been dumbed down. I mean, why is murder wrong? Why is theft wrong? Why is the use of, your media influence as an influencer to get people to send you a bunch of money that you do nothing for? Why is that wrong? Well, unless you got a really good personal understanding of why these things are wrong and how they corrupt society and all this, then it'll be easy for you to be deceived by a con man who comes and tells you that, it's justified to steal money from people to pay other people who need welfare, something like this, right? So yeah, without getting into like a massive discussion about media and government, I completely agree that the current form of media and government is a massive source of problems. But when we as citizens and sovereign beings who embody our society learn and re-educate ourselves, sacrifice our Netflix time to learn about law and principles of truth and these things, then we can better manage our rights. We can take these things back and we can claim them to be useful tools in the better world we're trying to create.
Yeah, that was so well put, because they are tools, or they are systems that can be used in such a proper way. And if, like, I'll just take, for instance, if I'm growing up and I'm 12 years old and I'd never been to the South before, and I have no imagination of what the South would be like because I've never seen a movie or TV show depict the South before. Well, then when I go to the South, I'm not going to have any preconceived notions of what people are going to be like, how they're going to treat me, what their customs are, which that can go one of two ways. It can go that, okay, I have no judgment, so therefore I'm going to be open, or I am terrified because I don't know what to expect. But when the government, or not, sorry, when the media decides for you, oh, we're going to depict the South as this type of way, so that we're going to make a judgment for you, that you're going to now judge people when you go down there. You're going to have a preconceived notion that people are going to act this way, that they are this way, and you better not act this way because they'll do this, and so on and so forth. You know, when they make up your mind for you, well before you even need to like have any kind of opinion on it, it it severely damages you because now you're judging people for no reason. I had a guest on the other day who said he was in Australia and they said something about lazy Americans, and it's the same type of principle that you're judging an entire group, you're labeling an entire group, 330, 350 million people, whatever it is, you're calling them all one word. Well, it's been propagandized that way. There's only one reason to judge a situation, even what I'm saying now, saying there's only one reason for it, calling an entire group this way, or we're representing the whole as just one part, or excuse me, representing one part as the whole. It's just, it makes things so divisive that there can only be a divisive outcome. Even if you are saying, okay, I'm going to practice not being not judgmental, so then I'm going to go there with my family, and you're going to then fight with your family because someone in your family is going to be judgmental, and you're going to be so against being judgmental that you're going to then fight with your family member instead of judging someone else. Now you're judging your own family member for judging someone else, and it's all the judgment of trying to be God, trying to assert your own way of life onto everybody else, which gets us into all of the scuffles, all of the divisiveness that we are in society in today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gets back to what we were talking about earlier about being willing to be wrong so you can learn how to be right. So really helps to keep these things in mind, because it's a pretty good rule of thumb is that whatever the media tells you, it's probably more complicated than whatever they share with you, even if it is true. So, yeah, reality is way more complex than we've been led to believe. So it's often a lot to learn out there for sure. So,
Yeah, I got two more questions for you here, if you don't mind.
okay.
Well, this one's just kind of like a double question. Uh, so do you meditate? I forgot to ask you this way back when. Okay, so you meditate pretty often?
Yeah, definitely. At least once a day.
At least once a day. Okay, that's awesome. So you being uh, as spiritual as you are, uh, what are some of the best ways that you have come up with? Like, what's your favorite grounding technique, and what's your favorite relaxation activities? That really help you root you into this world when you sometimes get too astral, too spiritual.
Mm. Um, well, I'd say if you're trying to get more grounded and you're in a more like contemplative, spiritual kind of high on thinking about cosmic values and such, these kind of things, a really good way to get grounded and back to earth is to, it may sound kind of cliche, but just clean. Do something simple, like simple life stuff, like, go for a walk, or as odd as it sounds, I actually like to clean dishes, or do something physical with my body. I think it's probably because I spend a lot of time on a computer. I'm like way more than I would like to, but hey, we got to make sacrifices to do what we need to do, right? But so that helps a lot. I also like to do what's called fractionation. So fractionation is you're in an activity. Let's say you're reading a book, like, and you're just like so into it, and it's all about how awesome the consciousness is, and you're learning about some really cool thing you really love. If you stop after an hour or 90 minutes max, and you go and do something totally different, like, you're in this really heady, like, I'm going to learn about spiritual concepts. You're going to stop using your mind. You're going to do something more physical. You're going to go from a thinking but not moving state to a moving but not thinking state. And so it's like changes the polarity, right? And that I find very helpful. Stuff like that. I also do a grounding technique where in a state of meditation, I'll just sit and count my breaths, and I'll just try to be aware of what's happening. I'm not necessarily trying to clear my mind with force. I'm just trying to sit there and observe, because in my experience, you can't actually clear your mind. You can't just like go blank. I'm not thinking about anything. That, as far as I've been able to do, I can't do that. Maybe some, Buddhist master can do that, but I can't do that. So what I've learned is that often if you just observe your thoughts and the sounds around you, the way your body feels, your breath, things of this sort, then you kind of create a still point of awareness in your own consciousness. And it opens your field of awareness. You get into a theta state, which is kind of that ideal meditative brain state. And you often get very balanced, and there's all sorts of health benefits, things like that, like activation of the parasympathetic, which is the relaxation part of you. So that's what I do to ground. I do also music. I play guitar, and so occasionally I'll play some guitar and play something that I can use to get myself out of one like really hyper focused way of thinking, because I spent a lot of time like, all right, I need to figure this out, so I'm going to spend like 12 hours like studying this subject, and I'm going to write like 50 pages of notes, and it's going to be great, but I'll get like obsessive over it if I'm not careful. So I'll try to stop that and do something else for a little bit. And as far as like relaxation, play is so important. I could talk for hours about how important play is, but so anything that I have done that qualifies as play, that puts me into a playful state, I'll sometimes do. Because I work so much, I kind of had a hard time with this for a little while. So I recently started playing like an old video game I played when I was a little kid, because it reminded me the most of when I was in a playful state. And so if I can re-experience that, then I can remember what that's like, and then I can induce that without having to play the game. So that's something I do as a way to play and relax. So yeah, those are some good answers for you. There you go.
I recently learned both of them through my experience in that the other day I was about to have an interview with somebody and I had like an hour and a half and I just got done a great meditation and I was super astral. I was very much like floating out in space as I'm walking around and I was like I got to do something. So I worked out and as you know, maybe 10 minutes in, you know, it took me forever to do jumping jacks. I was doing jumping jacks at first to pull me, and it was so hard, and my
Hmm.
body felt so heavy. But as soon as I got into it, it was just like, okay, I'm human again. You know, I can have this conversation. And
Mm.
the other one, the relaxation is at the beach. I relearned. So I didn't like the beach when I was a kid. It brought up bad memories for whatever reason. I just wasn't a fan. And then me and my daughter have been having such a good time at the beach together that I suggested to my girlfriend a few times. I was like, "Hey, let's you and I go to the beach, uh, you know, so we can get some time away." And it became like this thing where I hated the beach, and now like I'm insisting we go to the beach. And I was like, "Well, I think I've repatterned my learning in that I found something that I liked, I enjoyed, and I wanted to recapture that feeling." So just as you're saying that to me right now, it's like these are things that I've just learned about myself through experience in the last, you know, last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. So they really resonate with me. And it's funny what you were just saying about the not having a thought. I do that. I can get there. It's very hard in meditation to not have a thought. But what happens almost instantly is I forget I'm here and I fall asleep. So it's like I get into such a deep trance that it's like I forget and then I become the universe and I can become everything all at once. But then I fall asleep and I lose it all.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's good. Those are good methods.
Yeah. So this was such a great conversation, and you know, like I was saying in the beginning, you know, this conversation is was really exciting for me, and I, you know, the whole time, as soon as you reply back to my email, I'm like, oh yes, I was like, this is so awesome, and I would tell my girlfriend about it. I was like, I feel like I'm reaching into the matrix and like communicating to someone, you know, just because you've always been on my TV screen, you know,
Mm.
so it feels very different than other people that I've connected with in that like I learned so much from you directly, you know, watching videos of you speak that, you know, seeing myself on the screen talking to you right now, it's very humbling. It's very, I'm very honored to be able to do this.
Hmm. Well, it's been a great conversation. I really enjoyed the opportunity, and be I think this is having good conversations is one of the best ways to learn and grow and evolve and things like this. So yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you would come on and you would come drop some of the knowledge that you did. I mean, it's just mind blowing stuff that that I've learned in this conversation that I've learned from you in the last year. And anybody out there, I highly recommend going checking out Justin's work on stillnessinthestorm.com and his work on Edge of Wonder. I mean, the other guys on there, they're great, but Justin really has, from my vantage point, has a great grip on reality and how you can navigate through all the waters.
Mm.
As I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Oh no, I was going to say thank you. I appreciate the endorsement. So yeah.
Absolutely. Is there anything that you would like to share with our audience? You know, one last piece of knowledge or information you'd like to say?
Um, I'd say despite the fact that things look kind of funky right now in the world, sociopolitically and things of this sort, keep the faith, because amazing things are happening in the background, and we're all going to get a role to play in the liberation of the planet, I think, in the future here. So right now is a time of preparation, and use your time wisely, because you might play a big role in the phases to come.
Yeah, and hey, this is a big weekend coming up, right? The 4th of July weekend.
Hmm.
You know, freedom may be abound. Who knows? What's on God's agenda? We don't know. Divine timing. Even if it smacked us in the face, we would say, "Nah, it's not nothing's happening." You know,
Right.
nothing's changing.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to hold on one sec, I'll stop the recording. Wait, do you want to tell the audience where they can find you?
Oh, sure. If you go to stillnessinthestorm.com, there is a tab on their social media. I have all of my social media on there. I am most active on places like Gab and Telegram right now. And you can sign up for newsletter updates through my website, Stillness in the Storm. I also have, I should probably be mentioning this, a new store that I just launched. It's called Stillness in the Store.
Oh, I
And
like that.
yeah, we got all sorts of cool stuff. I got a bunch of t-shirt designs and merch and health products, and there's just a ton of stuff we're going to be putting on there. I'm really big into health, and I call it my body for awareness brand. So it's like, we spend all this time like wearing Adidas and Nike, and we're just like promoting these cabal companies and giving them free advertising. Screw that. Let's use our bodies to share the messages and information we think is the most important. So that's where the Body for Awareness project comes from. And there's a lot of stuff on there that you can get, and a lot more to come. So definitely check that out.
Well, that is awesome. I will definitely have to check that out. And I will absolutely have links in the description and the show notes. If anybody wants to check out Justin, you'll be able to go right there and do it. All right, everybody. I'd like to thank you all for coming out, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.